So, this video has been long overdue. I was streaming it, but the streams haven't been made public, nor am I recording anything, and they've been slow because I had to follow a schedule to play the quest, which means I couldn't just speedrun it and finish it quickly. I mean, it did kind of feel better this way. The adventure was more immersive, the pacing felt more natural when we actually had to wait days on scenes when it is implied a few days passed in the game. But it took way too long. I think I will be streaming publicly for 3.1, or at the very minimum recording a let's play and then uploading a supercut of the good stuff onto a video. This is on top of the reaction videos I will make, so yay, more content. I mean, we'll see how it goes. Now, let's talk about the Archon quest, or more specifically, just Act 1, because there is far too much content to cover Acts 1 and 2 into a single video. Actually, if it were up to me, Act 1 would be split up into 3 parts because there seem to be 3 major arcs that happen here. First is Gandharvaville, then Sumeru City, and lastly Port Ormos. Each act here is honestly so well done that they are good even as standalones, which is more than what I could say for the Inazuma story really. So far, Act 1 of Sumeru is arguably the best Archon quest up to this point. Although given that it's incomplete, I'm not yet ready to say that Sumeru's quest is better than the other nations as a whole. We all know how Inazuma Act 3 turned out. But hey, it just so happens that I'm recording this after the reveal of the 3.1 livestream, so it seems the story is going to get even better going forward. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. Let's talk about Act 1. So at the beginning of the Sumeru story quest, and more specifically the Gandharvaville chapter, we immediately get a sense of the danger and the unpredictability of adventuring into an unknown land by getting ourselves knocked unconscious. We get a strange vision, or I guess dream, of a giant pink tree which is later revealed to be Irminsul, before waking up and finding ourselves rescued by the forest rangers in Gandharvaville. And then we meet Kole and Tainari, who gave us medical treatment. Now, as we know, the Traveler is something of a legendary figure at this point. We've been at the center of many major events recently. We fought and saved Dvalin. We've clashed with multiple Fatui Harbingers and won. And we've fought against not one, but 2 ancient gods, Osail and Basht. Then we participated in a civil war in Inazuma, which resulted in the end of the Vision Hunt Decree. So to be immediately defeated upon setting foot in Sumeru, and by the smell of some burning incense no less, it's quite the humbling experience. Could you imagine like Child, Signora, or another one of the Fatui Harbingers passing out? It's funny to think about. The Gandharvaville arc really feels like a second tutorial into the game. The atmosphere, the novelty, the feeling of waking up in the middle of a new region, not knowing what's around you, as well as the town being on the periphery of Sumeru, you know? Away from all the politics and drama of the nation that is sure to come, a calm before the storm of sorts. Tainari is the only new character here, as manga readers are pretty familiar with Kale already. If you haven't read the manga, I heavily recommend it. Meeting her has been something that we've been anticipating for like 2 years now. And you know what? The game is not going to disappoint either, because when we wake up and go out the next day, we get a chance to hang out with Kale. This was a great opportunity for the Traveler to catch up to the player in terms of familiarity with this character, and also to see how she's doing in the present day.
Besides, I don't consider you 2 strangers. Anyway, you 2 know Amber, right? Wait, Amber? You mean, if you ask me, she's a prime example of a true outrider. She's the first person anyone coming to Mondstadt will meet. You can't help but be enthralled by her charm and enthusiasm, causing you to fall in love with the lands of Mondstadt and...
Okay, so I just want to say, I love this scene so much. Sometimes you meet someone for a short period of time, but those short periods were really emotionally close to you, so you tend to feel a certain attachment around those memories. They'd feel magical even. Amber was the most important person in Kale's life during the manga, and the more time passes, the more attached Kale becomes to those memories, but she never had anyone else to share those feelings with. Until we came along. Nobody around her knew who Amber was except for us. Nobody else has ever seen Amber before, so for Kale, it was the first opportunity to finally let her feelings out to someone who knew the person she loved so much. While it does seem a bit premature for our friendship to advance so quickly, from her point of view, this makes perfect sense. The Traveler, by virtue of having a friendship with Amber ourselves, have the capacity to understand Kale more than anyone else in Sumeru, and I'm all here for it. The reunion between Kale and Amber is perhaps the single most exciting thing that needs to happen. Oh my god. The more I talk about it, the more excited I feel, so let's just move on. We ended up having a nice little hangout, and you know what? It was so cute, and I loved it too. Until Kale started acting strange and seems to be in bad shape the next day. Tainari then ends up telling us Kale's backstory. It's mostly for the Traveler to catch up to the player's knowledge of her, but we still end up learning some new information. It turns out Kale had a disease called Elazar even before the Fatui came along. That ties in pretty well with the manga and fills in some knowledge gaps. Kale's situation before the Fatui wasn't very clear at the time. Although if you read in between the lines, it does feel suspicious that the Fatui would look to experiment on an Elazar patient. Why experiment on someone who has such a crippling disease? Were the other Sumeru children also Elazar patients? It said Dottore stabilized Kale's Elazar condition. It really makes you wonder if there's anything special about Elazar itself. Kale was one of the subjects that successfully managed to absorb the archon residue. So why did she succeed where others fail? Did Elazar play a role into her absorbing the archon residue? Really makes you wonder. Of course, on a more depressing note, despite the journey Kale went through, her personal struggles are not yet over. Fortunately, there's more to Elazar than meets the eye. It seems to be affected by the withering. I have a feeling that the truth behind the disease is grander than it appears, and that means a cure for it is in the cards during the main story. Also, a little amusing side note. At this point, the story looks like some tragic romance where the main girl is like super sick and then you dedicate yourself to finding a cure just to save her. But that's not what the story is about, so unfortunately we must move on. Let's take a quick moment to talk about Tainari'S personality. Because, well, I don't know. How would you even describe it? It's definitely not what you would have expected when you saw his splash art. He has such an innocent and curious look. Meanwhile, in-game is just... yeah. Okay, well, I'll save time on this segment because I'll give him his own video through the story quest, so I'll leave it here for now. Okay, so after hanging out for a bit, we are no longer vulnerable to the smell of spirit borneal, which leads us to explore a withering zone, which appears to be a long-term problem. It seems something is causing the withering to happen more often, and whatever it is, we need to deal with it. It intensifies an increasingly frequent epidemic of Elazar, and I really think a cure for Elazar is in the cards. But it's too early to go into heavy speculation on the withering and Elazar, so I'll leave it here. Now, here comes the trippy part. A letter arrived asking to help Hypatia, the girl with the incense who knocked us out. Here we have a really weird dream. To be honest, there was very little information to draw from it. And for some reason, we keep being teleported to some weird Inazuma domain. What connection does Inazuma have to Sumeru? Does it have any meaning at all? We know at the minimum that this dream was caused by a connection to the Irminsul, and we perceive the Dendro Archon's power. There's not much to work with here, to be honest, but seeing as dreams are a central theme of this chapter, there may be more yet to come. Well, I mean, one connection I can just draw off the top of my head is that the Irminsul is a pink-looking tree, and that Inazuma has the sacred Sakura, so maybe there's something going on here. After coming out of the dream and having a chat with Hypatia, we get more lore. It turns out our dream was a connection to Irminsul, and that there's knowledge in there that many in Sumeru Academia wish to reach. Also, people don't seem to dream, except children. And then there's the tiny creature that can trigger dreams. A valuable lore dump indeed, but man, this country is like the anti-One Piece world. It seems at this point we are ready to depart for Sumeru City. But before that, the Academia seems really intent on recruiting Tainari. There seems to be some beef between Tainari and his master, who happens to be a sage. Oh, and let's face it, the Academia did a terrible job of insisting he come. No answer on what tasks he's allowed to do, no timetable for coming back. Come on, that's such a scam. I wouldn't accept it either for how little transparency they're giving us. But that mystery will be sidelined for the time being as we say our goodbyes to Tainari and Kole and head for the capital. The two of them will be effectively leaving the story for the time being, but I doubt it's the last we'll see of them. I do feel a bit sad with the way our time with Kole turned out, but there should be much more opportunities later. Both Kole and Tainari seems to be set up with a role to play later in the Archon quest, or at least I hope. Okay, so we go to Sumeru City and gain access to a digital network of sorts called the Akasha. Wow, this feels really sci-fi. Or like virtual reality. You can access information from it anytime and anywhere, but it doesn't tell us much about Kusanali. Or at least not in terms of meeting her. Now, I was suspicious of the Akasha from the very beginning, a device that collects information from you and is always connected to you. It felt like an advanced magical surveillance system. The implications for such a system, even if you don't take into account Act 2, is already pretty scary in and of itself. But that's none of our concern, as we go through a bunch of contacts we're given to see if we can get any clues on meeting Kusanali. We went to Tainari's colleague, Catherine Osfond, but we've landed empty. We do get some good lore throughout though. There's a second faction of people from the desert that seemingly have integrated into Sumeru. So far, I can confidently say that the Eremites are massive upgrades from Watatsumi as a secondary faction in their respective nations. There's so much to explore with them. It's like if you combine the treasure hoarders with the Watatsumi people, and then multiplied their population by 5, and then gave them significant influence and power. I'm excited to see how the story develops for them. Okay, so, it is this next point we meet the next star NPC. Donyazad has arrived. Eremites are chasing her, it seems, because her parents are rich. She's also seen and talked to Kusanali before. It inspired her to go out and live free, which her parents did not allow since she had a crippling disease. She tells us about a festival dedicated to celebrating Kusanali, which seems to be our best lead now. She then introduces us to Nilu, who gives us background knowledge of the Sub-Zerus festival, and how the Academia quietly neglects its existence, hoping that it just stops existing altogether. I think it's obvious at this point that the Academia is actively trying to suppress and erase Kusanali's existence. The festival lacks funding and support when it really shouldn't. The Academia's portrayal in this story seems to be more and more negative the further we go. Also, oh my god, Donyazad and Nilo have such a low-key great friendship. They're so cute together. What? Okay, that's all I wanted to say. Back to the review. We strangely encounter Catherine here, and she's not acting like her usual self. Very suspicious indeed. But it still seems to be the same Catherine we talked to at the beginning, so I guess it's not an imposter situation. Yeah, okay. So in the meantime, before the Sub-Zerus festival begins, we get an update. Sumeru Academia lost an important package and they have scrambled to track it down. Whatever it is, it's our best lead, so we leave for port almost in the days before the festival. We also learn of an extremist group that opposes Sumeru for their old god, the Scarlet King. They're called the Ain El Amar, and our investigation in Port Ormos reveals they are willing to share information on the stolen package for 500,000 mora. In the process, they tell us a bit about themselves. The Scarlet King, he founded an advanced civilization far beyond present-day Sumeru and had the title of the God of Wisdom at one point. To be honest, this advanced civilization kind of gives me Convia vibes, but I don't think there's any connection here between the two. Anyways, lore on the Scarlet King and on the history of Sumeru could be found throughout the artifact sets, books, and other miscellaneous items within Sumeru, but I won't go into great detail here. The more pressing matter is, we got scammed. But it's okay, because the hottest dude in the game is coming to save us. Like, how is it even possible for someone to be this cool? Haitham at this point then becomes our most valuable ally. He answered our most important questions. What we're looking for is a knowledge capsule. You can literally inject the knowledge contained in the capsule into yourself. And so the knowledge capsule we're looking for is a divine knowledge capsule. One that has super classified and divine information that we would definitely need, yeah. And at this point, the reveal of the knowledge capsules reveal a new emergent theme in the Sumeru questline: freedom of information and censorship. Everyone seems to be happy the way things are, not having dreams, not having curiosity, to go beyond the limits of what they are allowed to know. Even to the point of just freely accepting propaganda talking points like how dreams are inherently unwise, and being discouraged from pursuing arts and culture. Like, the people of Sumeru are the most docile out of all the people we've met so far. This will be a huge part of my analysis on Sumeru's culture and social structures, because as things stand, this is perhaps the contradiction Dainsley points out about the push for folly. Knowledge capsules could greatly enhance the intellectual potential of Sumeru, as it is incredibly powerful in preserving knowledge through time. It then becomes comically tragic that the greatest commodity in the black market is knowledge, in the nation that prides itself on the glorification of knowledge. They're not even dangerous state secrets either. Even a case study on hilly churls in a knowledge capsule becomes illegal and would likely be destroyed by the academia. Haitham then offers us information on the divine knowledge capsule if we earn the trust of Dori by buying some of her best wares. Apparently he's quite rich, as he gives us the funds to make these purchases, and so we go and snake our way into Dori's circle and do just that. We also buy a separate knowledge capsule ourselves containing knowledge on sword fighting techniques. Now, we did absorb the sword fighting information and tested it out. Because of the minuscule power gain, Paimon did feel we got scammed from the sword fighting capsule. We didn't get much stronger from it, which makes Dori look bad, but I'm willing to bet that the people of average combat strength would get a huge boost. To be fair, we have already collected 4 out of 7 of the elements of Teyvat, which means we're way stronger than the traveler that defeated Signora at the palace. I'd say currently we're strong enough to contend with some of the mid-level harbingers at this point, which is stronger than like 70% of the playable cast lore-wise. But if someone like Barbara absorbed this, they could see like maybe a 400% increase in combat ability or something. I'm willing to bet that. That would then be easily worth the 100k more price that we paid for. Anyways, it turned out the reason Haitham wanted us to befriend Dori was because she had knowledge on who bought the divine capsule in an underground auction. I take it the reason Haitham refused to tell us this earlier was for the fear that we'd rush things and get denied, or maybe he just didn't trust us yet, I guess. Anyways, things go pretty smoothly here. We paid Dori with, I assume, Haitham's funds for the information. Turns out the leader of Ainel Amar has it. Well, we were just about to see them, so this is perfect.
Boss! Finally!
Do not impede our work. Is that understood, Haitham?
Of course. I was only trying to help.
Take him away!
World, forget me.
Okay, so the ending scene was pretty intense, but it also raised more questions than it answered. We knew the divine capsule wasn't just going to give insane power and wisdom to its recipient for free. However, whatever was in it, it did raise a few questions. Who was the one that wanted the world to forget them? Also, Haitham, the ever tricky and slick guy he is, took the knowledge capsule for himself. Wow, he just became the biggest winner and managed to use everyone to achieve his goal. Even though he was sus, I still think we can trust him. The knowledge capsule is now empty, and he doesn't seem to be loyal to the academia, but man, what an archon quest. It felt so well organized and complete, the characters felt better written. This was a huge upgrade from Inazuma. Of course, the next act will be even crazier, but for now, this on its own already, I think is the best archon quest out of any that came before. So that's it for the review, see y'all next time for Act 2.